The moment supply lines collapse, grocery shelves empty, and fertilizer stops coming, soil becomes power. During World War II, entire nations were pushed to the edge of starvation, yet food production didn't just survive, it exploded in key regions. Yields doubled and in some cases tripled under bombing, rationing and manpower shortages. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because governments, farmers and civilians were forced to relearn the fundamentals of soil. These are not romantic farming stories. These are hard-earned survival lessons written in dirt, blood and hunger, and they are directly applicable to anyone serious about long-term self-reliance today. Why World War II forced farmers to treat soil like a strategic weapon. When synthetic fertilizer factories were bombed, imports cut off and fuel rationed, farmers could no longer rely on industrial shortcuts. Nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium had to come from the land itself. Governments quickly realized that soil health was as critical as steel production. In Britain, Germany, the Soviet Union and the United States, soil science was mobilized like a military operation. Fields were tested, amended, rotated and rebuilt because failure meant starvation. The key lesson here is simple and brutal. When inputs disappear, only living soil keeps producing. Composting was scaled into a national survival system, not a hobby. During the war, composting stopped being a backyard curiosity and became policy. Britain's Dig for Victory campaign pushed massive compost production using food scraps, animal manure, straw and weeds. The secret wasn't just composting, it was volume and balance. A proven wartime ratio was roughly 3 parts carbon material like straw, leaves or shredded paper to 1 part nitrogen material like kitchen waste or manure. Piles were turned every 10 to 14 days to keep oxygen high and break down fast. Farmers reported yield increases of up to 3 times on vegetables compared to exhausted pre-war soils. For a survivalist today, this means building compost systems that can process everything. If a household produces 1 kilogram of food waste per day, matching it with 3 kilograms of dry carbon material keeps decomposition hot and nutrient-dense. This is fertilizer independence. Crop rotation was used aggressively to rebuild nitrogen without factories. World War II agriculture leaned heavily on legumes to replace synthetic nitrogen. Fields were rotated through clover, alfalfa, peas and beans, not for harvest alone, but to feed the soil. A common rotation in Europe was potatoes or wheat, followed by clover, then barley or oats. The clover phase could add the equivalent of 80 to 120 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare back into the soil through root nodules. Translated to a small survival garden, planting beans or peas on one bed for a full season, and then following with heavy feeders like corn or cabbage, can double yields without any purchased fertilizer. The step is simple. 1 season feeding the soil, 1 season feeding yourself, repeated without interruption. Deep tillage was abandoned in favor of soil structure preservation. One of the most overlooked World War II soil lessons was what farmers stopped doing. Heavy ploughing broke soil structure, dried out fields and destroyed microbial life. Fuel shortages forced many farmers to shallow till or use animal traction, which accidentally preserved soil biology. Fields retained moisture better and roots penetrated deeper. Trials during the war showed that shallow cultivation combined with organic matter increased yields by up to 200% during drought years. For survivalists, this means limiting digging depth to the top 5 to 10 centimeters once soil is established. The goal is aggregation, not pulverization. Strong soil structure is drought insurance when irrigation fails. Human waste was safely recycled when nothing else was available. This is uncomfortable, but war doesn't care about comfort. In several countries, treated human waste, often called night soil, was returned to fields after composting. The key was time and heat. Material was composted for 6 months to a year, reaching temperatures high enough to kill pathogens. Mixed with ash or straw, it became a powerful soil amendment. A common ratio was 1 part human waste to 4 parts carbon material, composted until fully broken down. This practice alone saved thousands of hectares from collapse. For modern survivalists, the takeaway is not reckless use, but understanding that nutrients never disappear. Proper composting protocols turn waste into fertility when systems fail. Mineral balancing, replaced blind fertilization and, well, it saved exhausted land. Wartime agronomists, instead of just dumping whatever fertilizer was available, really focused on calcium, phosphorus and trace minerals. Lime was widely applied to correct acidic soils, which had built up after years of chemical overuse. Correcting the pH, interestingly enough, unlocked nutrients already present in the soil, sometimes even doubling yields without adding anything else. One documented practice was applying, say, 1 to 2 tons of lime per hectare every few years. Scaled down, adding just a few handfuls of crushed eggshells or wood ash per square metre can slowly correct acidity in your garden beds. The lesson here is precision. Balanced soil, time and again, outperforms heavily fed soil. Polyculture planting honestly reduced pests and really maximised limited land. Monocrops were easy targets during wartime pest outbreaks, so farmers shifted to mixed plantings that confused insects and spread risk. Corn with beans and squash, grains undersown with clover, and vegetables interplanted with herbs all became common. These systems produced more calories per square metre than single crops ever could. A practical example: planting maize spaced 1 metre apart, beans climbing the stalks, and squash covering the ground. This 3-layer system actually mirrors wartime strategies and can yield 2 to 3 times more food from the same space, all while protecting soil moisture. The real World War II soil lesson, the one survivalists must internalise today, is this: the war proved that soil is not dirt, it is infrastructure. When fertilizer, fuel and machinery disappeared, living soil replaced them. Compost replaced factories. Legumes replaced nitrogen plants. Microbes replaced chemicals. Those who understood this ate. Those who didn't, well, they starved. If you are serious about survival, soil mastery is non-negotiable. Start now. Build organic matter relentlessly, rotate crops with intent, protect structure and recycle nutrients without fear. These are not theories. They are wartime facts paid for with hunger. If this guide sharpened your preparedness mindset and gave you tools you can actually use, subscribe to the channel, share this with fellow survivalists, and keep these lessons alive. Knowledge that fed nations under bombs can feed you when everything else fails.